Hey folks, this week on SysAdmin Weekly, Eric Siren and I, we sit down and we break open a long-standing debate inside of the IT community. It's almost as big of a debate as the whole Hyper-V versus VMware discussion, which, probably will never be settled, but here we are. The debate I'm talking about, of course, is whether or not you should place your Hyper-V hosts in the domain or outside of the domain. And so, of course, you get all the benefits of the Windows management tools by having it in the domain, but some people argue that having it outside of the domain creates a little bit more security, maybe some separation of roles should the domain be compromised. So Eric and I go back and forth on this, and we both clearly end on one side of the fence here by the end of the episode. So that's what we're talking about today on SysAdmin Weekly. So hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Hey everyone, it's a new week. That means it's time for SysAdmin Weekly. This is the show by sysadmins, for sysadmins, and dedicated to all those tireless tech folks working in the trenches, toiling away, sweating. It's a thankless job, so, we need to give those sysadmins as much praise as we can. And Eric and I could both say that because we've lived it. Eric is still living it. I'm more in a vendor role these days, but anyway, I digress. This show is for all of you sysadmins out there, and as you might have guessed from what I've said so far, we've got Eric back on today after a brief hiatus. How's it going, my friend?
I'm all right. How you doing, bud?
Doing good. You've been busy. You've had a lot going on. You moved into a new house, for one, amongst many other things. So it's good to see you after you've been so busy.
It's good to be back. I mean, I would not air my personal laundry on the internet like this, but if I were to do so, that alone would be an entire episode just of how June went. So, yeah, it's good to be sitting in this chair again. And
That's good. That's good. So it's good to have you. And of course, we are talking about a topic today that you and I have talked about many times over many a beer over the years. And of course, we are talking today about the question of whether you should place your Hyper-V hosts inside of the domain or outside of the domain. And so it's a question that has perplexed sages for many decades, right? Well, not many decades. I'm trying to be more epic than it really is, right? But it's been a conversation in the community for a very long time. And so we're going to be getting into that today. But before that, we have a couple of, regular opening intro segments that we have to get to. And the first one is our News React segment. And this is, of course, the segment where myself and my co-host, we pick a news headline that really kind of drew our eye recently. And I guess selfishly, Eric, sorry, I'll start. The headline that caught my eye, as security headlines always do, because I work for a security vendor, right? Microsoft looks to be finally removing antivirus vendors from the Windows kernel, which, thank God. It's long overdue. And this, of course, is a direct response to what happened with CrowdStrike. I think it's been almost a year now. How has it been almost a year since the whole CrowdStrike thing happened? That, of course, is when, I forget what the number was. Wasn't it like 2 or 3% of machines worldwide were brought offline? It was like a huge number. I'm going to have to go pull up that old CrowdStrike article and link that in the show notes along with the news article that I'm talking about here. So some interesting implications there, right? So AV vendors are certainly going to have to change the way they do things a little bit. I mean, there's ways to still provide effective scanning and protection without direct access to the Windows kernel. And to be honest, I don't want AV vendors poking around in my kernel. I want as few vendors as possible floating around inside of my kernel, but that's just me. So that's what I've got for my news item this week, Eric. What do you got?
well, I got two, but I want to make them fast. The first one that shocked me was that Notepad++ had a critical severity.
Oh,
yeah, really? Like that, just like how? But yeah, they did. And so there's a lot of places like get it off of your systems right now or upgrade. I mean, I think the I don't know the order of how the patch versus the disclosure, whatever, how that worked out. But yeah, Notepad man, they got I think it was in the 7s or the 8s in severity. It was
Whew,
way up there.
it was up
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And then the other one, and this is going to be fun because if you
Tease
haven't
me.
heard this yet, it's gonna come out, and our lives are about to change. The Chinese broke an RSA key with quantum computing.
No, I have not heard that yet. How have I not heard that yet?
I It floated fast, so then I kind of almost wondered like maybe it was fake news, or I don't know, because it didn't seem like it got nearly the waves that I was expecting.
Yeah.
And I was in the middle of something when it flew by my feed, and I'm, oh, I want to go check that out, and I never got to actually read the article. But yeah, even breaking one RSA key is a big deal. So,
It
but then
seems
we
like
may
that
come
would.
back and go, well, that was a 1024-bit key or something. Maybe it'll be something, I don't know, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if that really happened, like, you would think the sky would be falling across the security community right now. Because I
well,
mean,
people have already been screaming about that's coming, it's coming, it's coming. So maybe some people are like, well, we told you so, and
right? And I mean, there has been this big push for quantum safe encryption in the security community. I mean, there's a couple of defined standards out there, but I mean, they're still very, very young as far as standards go. I don't remember which one it was, but I think there were three quantum safe encryption algorithms that they had come up with. One of them was found to have known security vulnerabilities, so I think they went back to the drawing board on that one. But the other two are still good to my knowledge. So I, but yeah, it takes time to adopt all that, right? And so yeah, I'm gonna have to dig around for that, and I'll put some relevant links in the show notes, folks, so you can take a look at that too. Because I've been saying for a while now, I've been, one of those voices, right, that's been talking about quantum computing and its impact on encryption. The thing I've always said about quantum computing is it feels like one of those things that is simultaneously right around the corner, but like really far away at the same time,
yeah.
and it's not going to be a big deal until all of a sudden it is. And maybe
Or
this is
not,
that.
because and maybe I don't understand quantum computing, but I remember a description I read once is basically like you give quantum computing this insanely complicated task, and it guesses, but it gets really close, and then you have to use traditional computing to zero in on the correct answer, but you're close. That's the way I understand it. So it could turn out to be that we may be further away from practical quantum computing than.
Maybe. And
And let me give you a comparison too. As I remember in the 90s, IBM was working on solid state storage, right?
right.
But we didn't get viable solid state storage for decades.
A
So,
while,
but they
yeah.
kept going, we're close, we're close, we're close, we're close. And the best we could do was little thumb drives, right? For
Right.
forever. And then all of a sudden, okay, well, now we can do SSDs, for permanent, always on storage. So
Right.
maybe quantum computing is like that. It's like, oh, we're close, we're close, we're close. But what does that mean practically?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm gonna have to go look at that. I haven't looked at my security RSS feeds really closely for the last 5 or 6 days now because I've been so busy. But I'm gonna have to go look now. So because that could be a big deal. So stay tuned on that one, folks. So appreciate you sharing that, Eric. The next opening segment we have is what I call Nerd Hour. It's where we talk about the nerdy things that we've been working on. And of course, it doesn't take an hour. There's a whole story behind why it's called Nerd Hour. If you want that story, go back and listen to the episode that I did with Luke Oriana. I want to say it's episode 10. It's the one on scripting and DevOps in the AI era. So be sure to check out that one. But Eric, I went first for the news react. I'll let you go first for this one. What's the nerdy, geeky stuff you've been working on lately?
Well, I have been working on the virtual TPM and Hyper-V. As um, it's funny, like nobody really thought about it very much until Windows 11 kind of forced our hands on it. If you have all the right bells and whistles, you can install Windows 11 without a TPM, but you can't. I don't know of any way to upgrade from 10 to 11.
Right.
So all of a sudden, all these virtual machines and all these corporations are like, we got to do something here. And it's and the discovery a lot of people have come to is like, oh, I set the TPM on this Hyper-V virtual machine, and then I moved it to another host, and that won't start. Uh,
Whoops.
oops. So the Microsoft really only gives you two options, and one is the host guardian service, which is fine, but it's super heavy. It's
Right.
not a trivial thing to do. This is you have to put some thought into doing that correctly if you're going to do it at all. And the other one is you take your encryption keys and you just copy them from host to host to host to host to host to host to host. And I started kind of playing around with that method and scripting it and everything. Then I opened up the local certificate manager on one of my machines and it had like 40 some odd certificates. And I'm like, this is not gonna, I'm not doing this. I need to come up with a way to split the difference here because HGS is too heavy when all you want is a TPM and security is not really your goal.
Right.
I gotta be, I said that in one sentence and somebody's gonna be like, well, actually, it's not that
Security,
simple.
security should always be your goal, Eric. What are we talking? No, I'm just joking. I'm not going to
Exactly.
be
Well,
that guy.
somebody's going to be that guy. And I want to preemptively say I was trying to keep that whole segment short, is that HGS is really built around the idea of shielded virtual machines. And actually, our segment,
Yep.
our whole thing today is going to be around some adjacent topics. So we're going to get back to it. I don't want to burn a lot of time here. It's mainly when all you want is just that TPM thing and you don't want all the greater bells and whistles that come with it. HGS is so heavy. It's like so anyway, my week has been working on a way to how do we kind of split the difference between that way too much and way too much heavy-handedness, configuration manipulation management, HGS versus way too much difficulty, configuration management, copying host keys all over the
Right.
place.
Right.
So that's been my week. Your turn.
Interesting. It's more technical than mine has been lately. I think I said in the last episode, I've been doing a lot more soft skill stuff lately. I dusted off my. I'm running 2 Substack publications now. SysAdmin Weekly, the newsletter, which really doesn't take that much time because it's primarily content curation and things like that. For a long time, I had a Substack that was more focused on like mental health and technology. And I've dusted that off. I finally have the direction I'm taking that with. And so I've been starting to work on that. But as far as geeky, nerdy things go, the one thing that I have been working on outside of, my day job, I've got a Debian Linux related YouTube video in the works for the Andy on Tech YouTube channel. And basically it all centers around, what's the proper way to take production systems that are running Debian Bookworm and getting them upgraded to, Debian 13, Debian Trixie. And sure, you can always go and update your sources list and, put in the Trixie sources in there and do a quick and dirty apt update, apt get dist upgrade, right? And it'll probably be fine. But if you're running a very production critical workload with Debian Linux, there's quite a few different checks and balances you should probably do before you run that full upgrade. So that's what this whole video is going to be about. And I don't know, I've been comparing with the source release notes documentation and making sure that I cover all the little different things that the Debian developers talk about. And it's probably going to be like a 15-20 minute video when I'm all said and done because there's quite a bit. It's not just as simple as, back up your stuff. No, there's quite a few different things, go and make sure that you're not using any custom repositories and make sure that you grab this folder in etc and this folder in etc and go grab all your hidden config files in home, your .vimrc file, for example. So a lot of that type of stuff, right? And so I guess that is pretty geeky and nerdy because your average
Super
person.
geeky and nerdy. And the fun part too is I'd always kind of, I'm one of those people who I will not do an in-place upgrade of a Windows server. I won't do it.
Yep,
Won't do it.
same.
And now I'm like, maybe I should also rethink doing in-place upgrades of Linux servers. If you got to do a 15-minute video on it, maybe I'll go to Parallel install on Linux too.
To be fair, and this is just me, I have not had any major issues doing Debian upgrades over the years. That said, I have heard some horror stories in more complex and more nuanced environments, I guess I'll say. So it's
Right.
not without merit, all these extra steps, and
Of
if
course
I'm
not.
running
And it's not on Windows either. It's the same deal.
right,
If you're going to do an in-place upgrade of Windows, you really shouldn't just. I'll do props. I know they have an entire team at Microsoft who's dedicated. Let's make up in-place upgrades work. Cool. And why does it still break on like 90% of my stuff? And they're like, oh, well, we want to talk to you about that. I'm like, honestly, that's just more time I'm spending on something I don't really feel like I should do in the first place. So
Right. Yeah, exactly. We have some friends that actually like the in-place upgrade. We might have to have one of them on, and let's have a talk about that because I'm with you. Like, it just feels icky for me to do an in-place upgrade, but I don't know. I've got gray in my beard, so maybe maybe I can be classified as an old grumpy gray beard now. I'm not sure. I'm not
well, I'm going to
quite
say
full gray yet.
no, I don't. I don't think it's just that because I have got some relatively recent attempts of in-place upgrades that went kaboom. So it's not
Yeah.
like sure, it's not 1995 anymore. It's not like that, but yeah, anyway, yeah, another episode. Let's
Yep,
continue.
that's another episode for sure. And we're back. Now, of course, those folks that are watching on our YouTube episode are probably like, whoa, hey, Andy, Eric, you guys, kind of changed your clothes rather quickly there. Well, our recording platform that we use decided that it was going to start having issues on that particular day and experience an outage. So we've had to record this episode across 2 different days. And of course, this is the episode where we were talking about Hyper-V hosts and whether they should be in the domain or not. So it's just as much an issue as it was the last day Eric and I were recording about this particular issue. So, Eric, again, I don't know if I want to say a hot topic because it's not debated every single day in the industry, but divisive topic, I guess I would say.
Very
And
much.
again, to kind of reset folks here right after our intro, because I think our intro was around 15 minutes this time. We're answering the question of whether your Hyper-V host should live within the domain, outside of the domain, or I have secret option C, which is a dedicated management domain, which we'll get to there. And so I guess what we do for this episode, Eric, is we start with the case for domain joined Hyper-V host first.
Okay.
And I guess I'll jump right in with this one. I mean, to me, and I guess I'm giving it away here early. This is my preferred option because personally, I want all the power and all the management capabilities that come from things like Active Directory, group policy, basically all those tools that are baked into the on-premises Windows Server suite, right? I also get things like tightly integrated System Center Virtual Machine Manager, even though folks on this show know that neither Eric nor I are huge fans of System Center, but it's there as an option if I ever want it. I get Windows Admin Center, all those ecosystem tools, right? I mean, there's so many benefits that outweigh the cons, which we'll get to in a second. But Eric, I wanted to get your take as well.
If I'm architecting it, it's going in the domain. Period. No questions.
Yeah.
Regarding your secret option C, there might be a question of which domain it lands in, but it's going in the domain. There's no way I'm signing up for all the drama that it takes, especially I think now Google and AI are probably answering the question, so you don't see the forum posts as much. But there were years where the you would just post after post after post. Because as I'm trying to work with this host that's out of my domain, and I'm having all this problem, all these problems. I'm like, yeah, that's what work group management is. Which work group is not even really a thing. It's more of a it's basically like you could be in a domain, but you're not. We need a word for that. So we call it work group, but it's not really a work group. It's basically some computers that are kind of like loosely wired or wired. You know what? They're not, they don't have a relationship with each other really. So,
Right.
which hopefully that helps people make a little bit more sense of why there's so much drama involved in managing them because they don't understand each other at any level. So,
Right. The systems you're talking about, they don't understand each other,
there,
which
it would be if you want to get back into the domain understanding, which a lot of people are better at. It's like every single computer lives in its own forest, and there's you can't configure any kind of trust or anything like that. That's what you've got, and worker mode.
oh, that sounds terrible.
I
That
know I've
sounds
seen it, and I've watched people struggle, and there's a really easy solution for this, and you throw it. Oh no, that's bad practice.
And of
Okay,
course, again, I think we've arrived at this point where people are having this question because of how things have always been in the VMware world, right?
yeah,
You've never really had your ESXi hosts as part of the domain. It hasn't been
Right.
a thing. So
No.
people bring that VMware institutional knowledge over into a Hyper-V environment and make the assumption wrongly, I'm sorry, wrongly that those hosts are supposed to live in or outside of the domain, which is not the
Right.
case.
But
And I think
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that you're right on that, but the missing component is vCenter. The
Yep.
reason you didn't need it in the domain is because you have vCenter, which does
Correct.
a smaller flavor version of what a domain does. So you still
Yep.
had that centralized management. It just you had it in a different center called vCenter,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And now you're like, oh, I'm in this work group. I have no center of any kind. I don't understand why it's so hard.
Yeah.
I
So
cut you
it
off. I'm sorry.
No. You're fine. You're fine. So I mean, that's really where this argument kind of comes from, right? Is those architectural differences, and I think the other big argument that I've always heard against Hyper-V being part of the domain is people see the domain dependency as a downside in situations like uh, well, really, the only situation I can think of is if your domain controllers are virtualized on top of the Hyper-V host. But that's why we have cached credentials that last for I forget how long it is now. What is it, like 30 days or something like that? That allow you
Yeah,
to
I
log
forget,
in
but
without
it's
the DCs being online.
yeah,
And the other thing I've always done to avoid that particular sticking point is use the tools within Hyper-V to maintain separation of your domain controller VMs across different physical nodes,
right.
right? So that way, if one node goes belly up, you still have a DC somewhere in the environment. Or if you're really, really worried about it, I've seen people do this too, where they will have a third physical domain controller somewhere inside of the environment. It's just a pizza box server with bare minimum hardware in it, and it just runs a copy of AD, basically, is
Yep,
all it does.
and all that.
And so that's another option as well.
And that was the first argument that I ever encountered was, well, what if the domain isn't available? So first of all, Hyper-V is a kernel. It doesn't care. It's no different for the Hyper-V perspective than if you take your laptop to a coffee shop and you can't get on the Wi-Fi, your laptop is still going to turn on. So same thing, your Hyper-V is still going to turn on. It's not going to not run. It isn't going to not start VMs. It'll do all the things it's supposed to do because it's a kernel. It's not a service and it doesn't care if there's a domain or not. Hyper-V has no concern whether no ability to connect to a domain. Let me put it that way. Hyper-V itself is not. All you're doing is that management operating system connecting that to the domain, not Hyper-V. Hyper-V has really very little part in it. So that was the first argument. Like, it doesn't make sense, and there are solutions for any problem that you might encounter. So that one is
Right.
kind of a non-starter for me. If that's your
Yeah.
hesitation, then let's back up a little bit and let's rethink what's really going on here. You're and I had somewhere out on YouTube, if you look, you can find me actually showing, oh, look, I virtualized my one and only domain controller on my one and only Hyper-V host. And oh my, look, I can start it. Everything is fine. Everything just works. So I have demos out there. Watch me do this and do it in the worst possible way, screw everything up. And still, guess what? It's fine. It's just not a big deal.
It's fine.
The only
Yeah,
mistake I
exactly.
think you can possibly make, where you would really paint yourself in the corners, if you have the one Hyper-V host with the one virtualized domain controller and you put that domain controller on SMB storage. I think that you can get yourself into a place where you can't start because SMB requires that authentication component, right?
Right.
So that would be the only
Unless
place.
I think SMB, you can do certificate-based authentication
Yeah.
too, but I asked the question, why would I do that in that
I
situation?
again, and it seems like a lot of those certificate-based solutions are always coming around to, well, we understand that people really want to keep their boxes out of the domain, so here's this, we'll throw you a bone of CertAuth. And if you're, I like certificates, Andy. I really do. I like PKI. I'm a big fan. Spent a lot of time learning it, but man, PKI is not Kerberos. Kerberos is beat it. I mean, Kerberos is kind of designed to beat all the shortcomings in PKI. So yeah, I
Yep.
don't. Mm-mm. I wouldn't do
And
it. But
so that
anyway, that's not the point. The point being that it's hard to paint yourself into a place where you just cannot get Hyper-V to work because of a domain
yeah,
dependency.
right. And that's kind of where I'm at with it as well too. And you mentioned Kerberos, that brings me to one of the other common, I don't know if I can say it's an argument, but it's an argument I see where, where some people have said that, okay, well, if it's in the domain, there's a higher risk of credential theft, which the first time I ever heard that, I'm just like, scratch my head. Really? Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I really started peeling this apart, and then kind of thinking about it, right? And so the concern comes down to pass the hash attacks and Kerberosting. If you're not familiar with what Kerberosting is, basically a threat actor grabs a Kerberos ticket, takes it off site, and tries to brute force it with a rainbow table or something like that, right? And when I look at that and compare it with what we have with work group networking and work group authentication. I know NTLM is it's deprecated now, but it's still there. It's still functional, right? NTLM has had known security vulnerabilities for a couple of years now, right? And yeah, you've got certificate-based authentication, which I'm right there with you, Eric. As I love PKI. I think it's fantastic. It does a really good job. I hate managing it though. I I hate
Hey, you
managing
know
certificate.
what? If you join all your stuff to a domain, PKI management's pretty easy if you learn
It's
this.
pretty easy. That's right. But
I mean, we
when
get,
I say
oh, where did we
managing
start? We're right back where we started.
right, but when I say PKI management, I'm kind of implying like outside of the
Outside of the
domain,
domain, right? Now you get
right?
into, yeah, all these other things, and a
And
lot of it is like, so you automate it, and now like, okay, well, cool. Hang on a minute. Then are you paying it? I mean, it's just like, a lot of the stuff gets circular in that, like, in order to make it work the way you want it to without having a domain, you put in all this effort and you get to a place where you didn't solve anything.
right.
If you've got a machine out there that is like basically doing this thing by, well, I jump out to, oh, what's that? Let's encrypt, and I yank down a cert and I put it in there. Okay, how do you know that whole thing's not compromised?
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah, if
like,
we're
I
talking
like
about
Let's
trust, I
Encrypt.
mean,
I'm not at all trying to dog on them, but
same.
this is not really what its purpose is. Not really what they had in mind when they set all that up. And when we talk about this from a security standpoint, people are thinking, so somebody's inside my network now, and they're a threat actor here. And are you trying to convince me that your little Acme script you've got going to keep Let's Encrypt working is actually doing more for you than Kerberos would have? Because I don't think that's true.
And I
Am I missing something? Am I off base here, Andy?
no, you're not. You're not. And I think it comes, thinking about this problem, right? I think it comes down to a misunderstanding of Kerberos. And I think Microsoft, to their credit, have done such a good job with Kerberos just doing its thing and doing it well under the hood that nobody ever stops and thinks about Kerberos.
They
It's just
don't.
there. It just does its thing,
They don't. And it's kind of I want to like, is- I don't intend for it to sound mean, but sometimes I want to like just kind of, there's a trick I learned.
Angry Eric incoming.
It's more of a thing that we kind of do is like, so someone says everything the best they can, and then you do the, let me reflect back to you what I heard and see if that's actually what you meant to say. And
Right.
it's, and a lot of what you're telling me is you feel like your domain security is so poorly configured that if you just don't use the domain at all, you're going to make it better.
Right.
Following probably, assuming you're going to follow the same practices you did to put the domain in place that you yourself don't trust. I don't see you
Yeah.
winning here. I see you doing a lot of extra effort. And you know what? I want to tie that all the way back to the very first thing that we were talking about is when we went out in the forums and people can't manage it. So then they'd follow all these steps. Oh, I can manage it now. And then if you look at all the things they had to do, they took the not barely existent work group security and they knocked holes in it.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's less secure than it was out of the box, which wasn't all that secure to begin with. And now, oh, look, I did this more securely than my domain would have been. And I don't think you did any of those things. I think you just made your life harder and didn't not getting anything out of it.
Yeah. I mean, really what we're talking about is work group versus domain security. And I think that Kerberos just, you know, can't be beat from by a work group. It just can't. And
Why
I,
a work group?
you know,
Exactly. That's the trick you need to hang on to, because a lot of folks are like, well, Kerberos have been broken, Active Directory, all these things have been broken. Uh-huh. Right. But we're grading on the curve here. We can't take those things out of context of, if you don't use those tools, what are you going to use? And is that
right.
more secure than Active Directory? And is it? Because I don't think so. And also want to, because there's always these, well, look at this place, look at that. And I've heard example companies thrown out that have been breached, and like, okay, tie back the part where they were breached because their Hyper-V hosts were in the domain. That's the part that I need you to show me. And then they don't want to talk to me anymore. It's
And
like,
I'm
I
not.
think you're making stuff up here, guys. I think you've decided that's how it is and you're just going to roll with it. But like, no, prove that to me. Show me where somebody would have not been compromised if they had left their Hyper-V host out of the domain. Show me those people.
I'm not sure I have ever heard of a case where some big security incident occurred because Hyper-V was in the domain.
Right.
Because I mean, when I look at that point, and I look at the two commonly cited attacks, that I've seen common arguments against having it in the domain, Kerberosing and pass the hash. Like,
Right.
if you have a threat actor in your environment to the degree that they could do either of those things, you've got a bigger problem on
As
your
I was
hands.
thinking of this topic, one of the things I had wanted to say that I'm going to say right now is, if I'm a bad guy and I pop into your domain and the low hanging fruit is your Hyper-V host, I was going to tear you apart anyway. You did something really wrong that was, you're right. Because, and the other part, and I want to, you know what, let's go ahead. I think this is a good place in my mind to segue into your section C, where we have the dedicated management domain, because I fight this battle too on a similar but separate kind of footprint. And the idea here is, you have a domain and that's all it's for, is for managing stuff, usually
Yep.
bigger infrastructure, your DNS, Hyper-V, whatever. Um, for hosters, 100%. You have to do that, because you cannot
Yeah.
have commonality with your clients. You know,
Nope. Agreed.
uh, I would say if you're in a place where it makes sense to have multiple domains in general, then you should probably have a management domain. Okay. I will
Yeah.
say, okay, this is going to be mean and I kind of don't care. 99% of the time when I hear about, we have the one domain where the users live and then the one domain where the management people live, it's like that was architected by somebody who makes money off selling hours and licenses. And they can be mad at me if they want. I don't really care, because if the administrators in both domains are the exact same people, you haven't accomplished anything at all.
Yeah. You're
Nothing.
still intermingling between the two domains.
Yes. And let me explain a really one sentence reason why that doesn't do anything. Because if I come in and I compromise your user domain, what's left? If I completely wreck everything in your user domain, what do you actually have of any value? Okay, you got some domain controllers and some Hyper-V hosts that aren't compromised, but everything on them is compromised. What have you gained? You've gained absolutely nothing. You've added a layer of complexity, more licenses, more time, more management stuff, and you have preserved absolutely nothing. You know how long it takes me to rebuild a domain controller? Minutes, if
Yeah,
that.
that'd
I
take long.
mean, I can
Doesn't take
run, I
long.
mean, it takes way longer to get the Windows Server component installed than it does to, you know what I mean? So you're not
Yeah.
saving anything by having one management domain and one user domain. And furthermore, the Active Directory is already built around, you have places to put your admins, you have places to put your users, you have places to put, you have solutions for this already in the what did you do so wrong that you had to have a management domain separate that it fixed something? You see what I'm saying? It all comes back to, like,
Yep.
I have a lot of questions about your architecture, if this is actually more secure. And it rarely is. I'm sorry. And I'm really
Really
kind of
is.
ranting right now, but as you can tell, I kind of feel like this is not great. So,
No, I think the big thing for me, um, is when we talk about a dedicated management domain, really we're creating an artificial air gap, essentially, is what we're doing of
yes.
sorts. And you and I have had the air gap discussion many times over the years.
Yep.
And I know one thing that we both agree on largely is the fact that there is no true 100% full stop air gap in
Right.
existence.
Which means
There's
that there's no such
always
thing as an air gap. I mean, in my mind, there are very
yep,
few things that are binary, but air gapping is it. So you'll go in, oh, well, we're air gapped. And you look at it like, well, but I have my own VPN connection, or I have this, or I have that, or I have that. Like, then it's not air gapped.
or we have to open port 22 for management, or
Yeah.
let's open 3389 for
Yep.
RDP, or
Yep.
I mean, you start
Yep.
poking
And it's
holes
not
in
air
it,
gapped.
it defeats the purpose of
It's
an
not,
air gap.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's no longer air gapped. One hole is, it means you're no longer air gapped. Now you're just telling lies on yourself because you can
Yep.
accomplish those things in the same domain with firewalls, with subnetting, with, there's a lot of ways to do this and bring in other secure. And you can go get a cheap. Gosh, I was about to actually kind of make it more complicated than I had to. You can set up a cheap little NUC, one of those cheap little jobs you can get for like $200, and put OpenSense on it, and pretty much accomplish everything you need that the domain can't give you. Right.
Right.
So like I want to use a phrase I hear all the time in this debate is like, well, line of sight. Like, so if I'm in the same domain as a user account, regular day-to-day user account, with your Hyper-V host, and I can see that Hyper-V host just because I'm in the domain, you did something very wrong. That's even out of the
Yeah.
box. It shouldn't work like that. And it's like these arguments get worse and worse and worse. It's like, I don't think you're really understanding how domains are architected. And
Yeah.
some of the things you can do pretty easily, like I can make it to where those regular user accounts can't even see the Hyper-V host at all, completely
Yeah.
unaware of its OU, its existence. They can't even get to it. They can't see administrators. I mean,
And that's how it should be, because, if you're operating like you're supposed to in today's security ecosystem, you should always assume breach and therefore limit the visibility that your standard users
right.
have, right? And so, I mean, yeah, as a threat actor breaking into your domain, that is one of the things that would limit my visibility. Um, could I still do things like Kerberosting and pass the hash? Yeah,
Yeah,
but with a work group, I mean, I'm gonna
right,
pop the security on a work group way
right.
faster
We're still
than
grading
I
on a
would on a
scale
domain.
here. And hopefully, with any luck, there's a firewall sitting there
Yep,
or segmentation on the network to where the routing doesn't work correctly and they can't actually get to the Hyper-V box anyway. Cool, I
yep,
have a
yep,
password, but now I got to get there, right?
yep.
I mean,
And there's all kinds of different ways you could do that, right? You could do just your layer 3 routing to prevent that traffic. I've
mhm,
seen people maintain that separation using VLANs.
mhm.
So I mean, there's all kinds of options
Yeah, and
for
they're really not that hard. And that's what I want to come back to is maintaining in a work group is hard. It really is.
it is.
And
Yeah.
and I'm still waiting for somebody to not do a thought experiment. I mean, show me. I get a lot of people like you can write things down that make a lot of sense on paper and then, yeah, okay, and talk yourself into it, but put it in practice. Actually show me this breach. Show me how this is wrong. Show it to me. Do that part. I've never had anything come back and say, yes, here's the actual place where keeping it in the domain would have stopped or out of the domain would have stopped all this or prevented it or been whatever. And
Right.
then, okay, and before even before I accept that, like, was that a misconfiguration on somebody's part? And I'm not talking about somebody had a bad day and they missed something. I'm talking about an actual like misconfiguration, something you should have picked up on an audit or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. That's the part I need to see is, oh yeah, well, we accidentally put Kevin into the domain admins group and he wasn't supposed to be.
Yep. And I
But
guess some people make the argument that, okay, work group is uh, from a user management perspective is kind of less complex because you don't have all these different user accounts to management or to manage, but you have to manage local user accounts now at
yeah,
a different scale depending on how many hosts you
yep.
have. So I
And you're going to wind up with some sort of like, I was about to be generous and say you're going to have a secret server in a vault somewhere, but you know what they've got a lot of times is Excel sheets with passwords,
yeah,
which are accessible by the domain administrator account.
I hope not. I know people do it. I know people do
I
it,
know,
but
and it's more the debate of, well, this is more secure. And it's really not. No,
the
it's really
security guy
not.
in me is like,
No.
come on, why don't you use something like Bitwarden, or at the very least use KeePass for God's sakes, like,
But then you got to
ugh,
share the key pass thing. You got to make sure that doesn't get. I mean, it's everything comes
yeah.
back to this whole thing of like if you just put it in the domain, it's just
And I
and take
think,
all this energy, y'all. Take the energy you're putting into that to really get your Active Directory chops sharp, and
yeah,
you'll find out pretty fast. Oh yeah, I can lock that down pretty hard, and then all I have to watch out for is the CVEs on Active Directory concerns. Make sure my firewalls and all that are updated. Use that energy to more constructive places than sitting around going, "Oh, I got to go in and do trusted hosts and all this nonsense." And you know,
yeah. I think if I step back and look at this whole discussion, and I'm an admin that maybe I have just, basic functional knowledge of both work groups and AD, and I have two paths in front of me for setting this up. I can either go the work group route or I can go the domain route. I would argue that the domain route, given baseline minimal knowledge of both methods, it, how do I want to say it? The domain route brings fewer pitfalls for disaster than the workgroup method does,
Mhm.
because AD does a fairly good job of being mostly secure out of the gate. There's some stuff that you should change, right? Some practices you should take care of. But again, like I said, your average administrator who's not an expert in either workgroup security or domain security, I would argue that the domain route is going to give you more security, better security in the long run.
Yes, start
So,
there. You'll automatically have better security. I'm sorry, like straight out of the box. Just open it up, turn
yeah,
them both on, do the defaults. Work group versus
yep,
domain. Domain is already more secure. Already. Okay.
yep,
Then you can massage it in the direction you want it to go.
yep,
And the bulk of literature on all of this stuff, don't look at it as a Hyper-V thing at this point. Just how do I make my domains more secure? How do I make my resources more secure? Because I want to go back to something I kind of touched on. But here's the thing: as a threat actor, what I want to do, okay, is compromise a user and then go berserk on the file shares.
yep,
That's what I want to ransomware and lock down. That's my target. So if security is your goal, yeah, it'd be okay to get the Hyper-V host, whatever virtualization. That'd be all right. That'd be great, right? But the point being that the super low hanging fruit is always the users, and there's certain things you can't lock them out of. And guess they're pretty much using the data that is important to the institution, right?
yeah,
So your security standpoint needs to be over what are the attackers after? What do they want? What are they getting? You know what I mean? It's just, yeah, don't don't freak out so much about something the attackers are like, yeah, that'd be nice to have, but the ultimate goal is the data,
yeah,
not the infrastructure.
for sure. Um, Yeah, I that's where I keep ending up with this argument, right? I keep trying to see a world where I would go the work group route, and there's just not for
There
me
isn't.
personally.
No, not grading on the curve. I mean, if people are always going to, well,
Right.
there's that one attack against Active Directory, and yeah, that's true. People break that. It happens, and it's not great. You know, but we're grading on the curve. We're not saying Active Directory is impenetrable. We're
Yeah,
saying
and I
that
mean,
you've got two choices: workgroup mode and Active Directory mode. Those are your options. And let me tell you, on any given Tuesday, domain is
no,
more secure.
yeah, and I mean, I keep bringing up Kerberos and pass the hash. Are those attacks of concern? Yeah, I mean, I look at Kerberos. It's where they take that Kerberos security ticket off site and they start brute forcing it. Yeah, that's a concern, but like I said earlier, if you've got an attacker in your environment that's at the point where they can already grab a Kerberos ticket like that,
Mhm.
uh, eh, they've
They've
got
got access to your
fi-
data, which was the thing you're really trying to
exactly,
protect anyway. So what you're not
exactly,
gaining anything out of yeah.
exactly. So, well, to just kind of wrap this up here, I've got one final section in today's outline here, and that is, operational real world trade offs. If you're not convinced either way thus far, there's a couple other minor things to keep in mind. The big one that comes up for me is like backup software and monitoring agents. There are a lot of third party vendors that provide those services that tend to have some sort of domain requirement. Not always,
Right.
but they do, right? So depending on what backup vendor you're using for your Hyper-V VMs, Maybe there's a domain requirement there. Same thing with monitoring agents, or centralized logging is another one that I think of. So if I'm trying to keep an eye on all my infrastructure, and now I have to worry about, these work group machines that I need to procure logs from and parse and look
Mhm.
at. That just creates additional headaches for me. Automation at scale is another thing I think about, Eric. So like, okay, I have this PowerShell script I need to run against every server in my fleet.
Mhm.
Okay, now I have to do the Hyper-V host separately because they're in a work group,
Yeah.
and I can't
Or, oh,
roll
hey,
that
I
out
have this
using the
great
policy. Or
idea where we'll put an agent on it and we'll open up this network port for that agent to function. And the agent is maintained by this company who's got 36 employees, two of who are security geniuses, and they're responsible now for every single customer and that agent, so on and so forth. Or the other folks out here who are using Microsoft with PowerShell and SIM on port 5985 with thousands and thousands and thousands of security people beating on it all the time.
yep,
Yeah, I mean, I get that there are these CVEs and whatnot, and it's scary, but honestly, I want the one with a lot of eyes on it because you statistically that those problems get fixed faster than these little because everything in a work group then is going to require some sort of punching a hole in something,
right,
and the
yep,
global understanding of what we're doing when we do that is much smaller than the what happens within the domain, if that makes sense.
yeah, it does. Yep, absolutely. So, excuse me. Well, Eric, I think we've beat this debate with a like a dead horse, right?
Yeah, and I'm
It's
hoping, I'm actually kind of hoping somebody comes back with, well, did you think about this? And they give me some
you know,
really new information. It'd be kind of nice to actually be, yeah.
And again, folks, if you do have something like that, like you've got a very specific use case, or you just want to rant the counter argument that Eric and I have made, right? It's funny when I laid out this outline, I laid out the domain mode, work group mode, and management domain as like three separate options. But I mean, Eric, you and we kept coming back to no, this is why you should use a domain.
Yeah, but
No, this is
extra
why you should
time
use a
off
domain.
is like, let me research, let me really research the arguments in both directions. And like the one way just looks like somebody sat down and did a thought experiment. And then now we all just kind of listen to that guy and he never tested his thought experiment and didn't think, and it wasn't even fully fleshed. So like, I just haven't found a really great evidence supported argument against domain membership.
Yeah, neither have I. I'm right there with you. And again, folks, if you've got a use case or your own point of view, again, you can reach us at contact@sysadminweekly.com. That'll get you into our inboxes if you want to share your thoughts. I'd love to get some differing viewpoints on this. So, but Eric, I think that's a good segue into wrapping it up for the day here. We've got um, some other topics that we're going to be discussing in future episodes, so we're looking forward to that. But I've already mentioned the mailbox. Also, be sure to check out our companion newsletter to the show. You can find that at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. So that's a newsletter that goes out every single week. It includes the latest episode of the show, a previous episode that we're kind of highlighting that is relevant to, anything that is currently happening in the industry. We also share a bunch of awesome community related content out there as well, too, from industry leaders, Microsoft MVPs, things of that nature. And I always try to do some sort of overarching theme. So, as of this recording, I think this last week's theme was, what was it? It was leveling up was the previous week. The previous week was all about learning. You'd think I would remember this most recent week's one before the week before, but
Hey,
that's
we're
how my
thinking
brain
about the
works.
next
Anyway,
week. It's fine.
that's right. That's right. But anyway, be sure to check out that newsletter. A lot of great information and juicy stuff that you can use in your sysadmin trenches. Also, be sure to check out Project Runspace, projectrunspace.org. A lot of great written content out there. Other than that, Eric, what do you think? Should we wrap it up?
Yeah. Let's hear those comments. Prove me wrong, please.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, folks, we'll let you get back to your day. Thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.